Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. A very interesting methodology of teaching that can be seen in the Quran is the fact that Allah always combines theoretical and then practical knowledge. So He first explains the theory and the logic. In doing so, He asks us rhetorical questions, encourages us to reflect and to gain wisdom. And then He gives us an example that practically implements the theory. So in this case, Allah has been warning the disbelievers about the coming of a day of judgment. He has not yet discussed the details of what will happen on that day, but He has provided a lot of logic and rationale to prove that theoretically it makes sense to have a day of judgment, a day where only the true master will prevail and all false gods will perish. Now Allah provides us with a practical example to prove that nothing in this universe is worth worshipping, regardless of how impressive it might seem, and that only those who remove their ego will be able to testify easily to the truth. The rest will blindly follow the crowd, even though their hearts will testify that they are wrong. So, as mentioned in verses 74 onwards, Ibrahim a.s. is confronting his father and arguing that the practice of worshipping idols as gods is a huge mistake. He does not mention Allah, nor does he warn his father of a day of judgment, so it can be assumed that perhaps he was not a prophet at this time. In fact, from the Old Testament, we know that Ibrahim a.s. would persistently challenge his father's concept of idol worship even when he was very young. His father was a prominent figure in the city of Ur that was a part of the kingdom ruled by King Nimrod. Ibrahim's argument was always based on the fact that it makes no sense to worship things that have been created by others. After all, surely the one who made the idol with his hands is more powerful than the idol itself. So why pray to the idol? He also could not understand why a stone idol that appears so helpless and useless was deserving of man's worship when insan could just destroy them all instantly. But of course, being raised in a kingdom where idol worship flourished and no one had heard the concept of Tawheed, nor did any Hanifs exist, people who only worshipped one God. That's why Ibrahim a.s. had to face a lot of backlash from the community, especially from his father. Being a human, that can weigh heavily on your conscience when no one is willing to listen to your argument, especially when you don't have any proof, and everyone appears to be doing the same thing, which is worship of idols. So to boost his faith and to give him this reassurance, this certainty that by questioning, he was actually on the right path. Verse 75 explains that Allah shows him the realm of the heavens and the earth so that he could have absolute yaqeen. Now, some scholars interpret verse 75 as suggesting that Ibrahim a.s. was raised up above the skies and shown the entire universe as a miracle when he was a prophet. Therefore, just like Musa a.s. was shown signs and Muhammad, peace be upon him, was taken in one night from Makkah to Jerusalem and then up to the heavens, they claim Ibrahim a.s. was shown the entire universe. But there are two problems with this interpretation. First of all, it doesn't appear that Ibrahim a.s. is a prophet at this time, because a Rasul will always mention Allah or the Day of Judgment every time he preaches. He won't simply question his father's practice of worshipping idols without making any argument regarding the one true God. And as I have just explained, in this case, we don't see Ibrahim a.s. talking to his father about Allah or about the Day of Judgment. So it doesn't seem like he is a prophet at this time. Secondly, if Ibrahim a.s. had already become a prophet, then it doesn't make sense to show him the entire universe so that he can have yaqeen, which is actually what the verse says. After all, wouldn't he already have yaqeen given that Jibreel is visiting him with Allah's messages? So instead, it is likely that at this point, Ibrahim a.s. was challenging the practices of his community without propagating Islam, because he didn't actually know about Islam at that time. He wasn't a Rasul. He would tell them to worship the creator of everything, but he didn't know how exactly to worship that creator. He didn't know about the rituals at that time. But what he did know is that there has to be one God who has created everything and who is deserving of worship. But then the question is, if Ibrahim a.s. is not a prophet at this time, and if Ibrahim a.s. was not physically taken up into the heavens and he was not shown the entire universe, then what does verse 75 actually mean? When Allah is saying Allah showed him the realms of the heavens and the earth, what exactly did Allah show him? This is actually linked to verse 76 onwards. Because really what it means is Allah was giving him the knowledge of the heavens and the earth in order to boost his confidence that his claim against the community is actually right. And this is important to understand because from verse 76 onwards, you will see that this community was obsessed with worshipping sun, moon, and stars and all celestial bodies. These are the same bodies that Ibrahim a.s. kept arguing against. He kept telling his nation that these things appear to be very impressive, but they cannot be worthy of worship. And because the community kept fighting against Ibrahim a.s., Allah gave Ibrahim a.s. knowledge, ilm, and guidance regarding these celestial bodies to further boost his iman that he's right. These things are very impressive, but they are not worthy of worship. And that's what you see in verses 76 onwards. So to understand verse 75, you have to understand the demonstration that's taking place in verse 76 onwards. Being shown the realm of the heavens and earth doesn't mean he was physically taken up and shown it. It means he was given knowledge and wisdom and ilm regarding these bodies to further understand that yes, these things are impressive and they're beautiful and they have a purpose, but they are not God. So as you can see in verses 76 onwards, Ibrahim a.s. is providing a demonstration to prove to his nation that it is best to worship the Creator of all. Again, at this time, he has not yet become a Rasul because he does not call himself a Muslim, nor does he make any mention of the Day of Judgment, the coming of any azab. And since his people were obsessed with worshipping the sun, moon, and stars, in addition to a plethora of other idols, Ibrahim a.s.'s demonstration revolves around the sun, moon, and stars. This is the understanding that Allah put in his heart and in his mind, which is what verse 75 is really talking about. So Ibrahim a.s. sees the stars and announces to everyone that this is my Lord, given how beautiful the stars appear. Then the next morning when the stars disappear, he announces to everyone that he doesn't like worshipping something that disappears. Meaning, what would be the point of worshipping a god that disappears throughout the day? Then he sees the moon and he tells everyone, this is my Lord. But the next morning, again, the Lord has disappeared, rendering it useless. Then he announces that unless my God guides me, I will be amongst those who are lost. So then he eventually points towards the sun and he says, okay, the sun is beautiful and brilliant. This is my Lord. But then at night, when it sets and disappears, he announces that he will only worship the one God that must have created all of these things, because surely the one God that created all of these things must be more powerful than all these creations combined, and he must be one that never disappears. He's available during the day and available at night. And also in these verses, now Ibrahim a.s. is calling himself a Hanif, meaning someone who worships one God. He doesn't know how to worship that one God because he's not a prophet yet. That's why he's not calling himself a Muslim. But he now has absolute yaqeen that there is only one God, and he's now calling himself a Hanif in front of everyone. Now, some people claim that Ibrahim a.s., prior to being a prophet, at this time, actually did consider for a moment that the sun, stars, or moon were the Lord, but he would get disappointed every time it would set. Now, this interpretation is wrong for multiple reasons. Firstly, no prophet of God ever engages in shirk even for a brief moment, even if it is before becoming a prophet. Not even for a day. Allah ensures that all of his prophets are protected from engaging in sins, especially shirk, even before they become prophets, so that the nation can testify to their strong character and their love for Tawheed from the very start. Secondly, it is obvious that this was just a practical demonstration. This was just an act. It wasn't like he was seriously considering the worship of stars, sun, and moon. Because once Ibrahim a.s. made it clear that he doesn't like things that set and disappear, such as the stars, why would he get up the next day and tell the nation that now the moon is my God? And then after that, now the sun is my God. Didn't he know the moon would also disappear in the morning? Didn't he know the sun would disappear at night? Was he seeing the sun, moon, and stars for the first time in his life? Of course not. He knew these things would eventually disappear. He was just doing a practical demonstration. It was an act. It does not mean he was actually reflecting and thinking that these are gods, and then eventually when they disappeared, he got disappointed, and then he realized that there's only one God worthy of worship. Thirdly, verse 83 makes it clear that Ibrahim a.s. was taught this argument and demonstration as a means of showing his people to use their sense and come to the right conclusion. So this proves that when a person is constantly seeking the truth and trying to stay away from haram, always trying to protect himself from what he believes is wrong, then Allah will guide him. Allah does mention that He raises to degrees whom He wills. So Allah put the courage and conviction of Tawheed in Ibrahim's heart, and He gave them the knowledge and the ilm to come up with this practical demonstration, which can easily prove to any intellectual person that worshipping idols or even celestial bodies makes no sense. So Ibrahim a.s. was not a Rasul at this time, but Allah was putting the idea in his mind and in his heart that this is the demonstration that you need to do. So again, in verse 75, when Allah says Allah taught him the realms of the heavens and the earth, this is what it means. Allah gave him such beautiful knowledge and wisdom that he was able to prove not only to himself but to everyone else that he has been right from the very start, that these celestial bodies might look impressive, but they are not worthy of worship. And again, this is something Allah put into his mind and into his heart, even though he was not a prophet at this time. And finally, to challenge those people who claimed that he was a Rasul at this time, and he was doing a practical demonstration to try and convince his nation not to worship anything other than Allah. That in itself is also wrong, because no Rasul can ever temporarily state that the sun, moon or stars is Lord, even if it's just a practical demonstration, because it would confuse the nation about his message. The nation would get confused that in the morning he said that stars were God, and then suddenly now he's changed. And now he's saying the moon is God, and again he's changed. And now he's saying the sun is God, and again he's changed. So no Rasul can be given this practical demonstration because it would not convince the nation of Tawheed, it would confuse them. Therefore, this again reiterates that Ibrahim a.s. was not a prophet at this time, and this was just a practical demonstration. It was knowledge that Allah had gave him, even though he was not a Rasul, to encourage him and to convince him that he was right, he was on the right path, he should continue arguing along these lines. But then if Ibrahim a.s. was not a prophet at this time, why is he mentioning Allah in verses 80 and 81? When Ibrahim a.s. challenged their idols and claimed that their idols were useless, the nation threatened him that if he did not stop, they would invoke the gods to curse him, to which Ibrahim responded that why should he fear these idols when they do not fear that they have associated gods with Allah, for which Allah has not sent down any authority. The fact that he mentions Allah in this manner proves that the nation did believe in Allah. They must have heard of Allah, otherwise they would have responded by saying, who is Allah? So clearly they had heard Allah before and they did believe in Allah. But just like the Quraysh, they had added other idols to the worship of Allah, and they had moved away from Tawheed. Otherwise, it would make no sense to talk about Allah when the nation has no idea who Allah is. So what that means is just like the Arabs in Quraysh, and just like Hindus nowadays, in fact, even the people of Ibrahim a.s., his nation, they did believe that there is one God called Allah who has created everything. But the mistake they made is they created lots and lots of other gods as well, who they believed were lower in the hierarchy. They were less powerful than Allah, yet they did believe that all of those were also idols. They were also gods that needed to be worshipped. That is why Ibrahim a.s. is asking them, has Allah given them any authority to add these extra idols? Did He send any book or prophet naming these extra idols? Why are they not scared of Allah? They have the audacity to tell Ibrahim a.s. that he should be scared of their idols, but shouldn't they be scared of Allah when they know that Allah has created everything and He's the Almighty and All-Powerful? So while the nation was threatening him, he's threatening the nation, asking them which of the two parties has more right to security, the party that has mixed beliefs with injustice, or the party that only walks on the path of justice. Again, note here that he's not threatening his nation with an azab, or with the coming of the day of judgment, or with accountability, or with heaven or hell, because he's not a Rasul at this time. But Allah has given him so much ilm and knowledge, again based on verse 75, that he's able to come up with these genius arguments even though he's not a Rasul. And this helps us to understand that when you are sincerely seeking the truth, Allah will guide us as well. He will give us the knowledge and wisdom that we need, as well as the courage and conviction. Assalamu alaikum.